The ship was quiet at night. That was what Commander Vera Hollins liked most about the late hours. The hum of the engines was soft. The lights were dim. Most of the crew was asleep in their rooms. Vera could walk through the halls alone and think about nothing at all. She had been on this ship for 3 years now. The Starward Hope was a big vessel, built by humans and Valorians together. It was one of the first ships of its kind. Humans and Valorians had only met 5 years ago. At first there was fear on both sides. The Valorians looked like large cats. They stood on 2 legs and had silver fur and big amber eyes. They were taller than humans. Most of them were almost 7 feet tall. Their voices were deep but soft. They moved without making any sound. Vera had been afraid of them at first. She would never say that out loud, but it was true. She had grown up on Earth in a small town where the biggest animals were dogs and deer. Seeing creatures that looked like tigers walking around and talking had been strange. But 3 years on this ship had changed her. Now she could not imagine life without them. The Starward Hope had a crew of 60 people. 40 of them were human. 20 were Valorian. They worked together every day. They ate together. They fixed problems together. They had become something like a family, but there was something special about this ship that no other joint vessel had. This ship had children on board. Ambassador Kathira was the head of the Valorian group on the ship. She was wise and calm. She spoke slowly and carefully. She never got angry. Vera had great respect for her. But Kathira had done something that no other Valorian diplomat had done before. She had brought her 3 young ones with her on this mission. In Valorian culture, families stayed together. It was very important to them. Cubs, as they called their children, learned by watching their parents work. They believed that sending children away from their parents was cruel. When Kathira was chosen for this long mission, she had asked if her cubs could come. The human leaders had said yes. The cubs were named Talos, Mora, and Fen. Talos was the oldest. He was about 6 years old in human terms. He was curious and brave. He asked many questions and wanted to understand everything. Mora was in the middle. She was quiet and liked to watch. She did not talk much, but she saw everything. Little Fen was the youngest. He was only about 4 years old in human terms. He was full of energy. He ran everywhere. He touched everything. He was always getting into places he should not be. The human crew loved the cubs. At first, they had been careful around them. They did not know how to act with alien children. But cubs were cubs. They played. They laughed. They made messes. They asked silly questions. Soon, the crew forgot that they were aliens. The cubs became like the ship's own children. Vera often found herself smiling when she saw them. Talos would sit in the mess hall and ask the cooks how they made food. Mora would hide in the storage room and watch people work. Fen would run up to crew members and grab their hands and try to show them things. He had no fear. He treated every human like a friend. The Valorian adults were different from the cubs. They were formal and careful. They followed rules. They spoke in proper ways. But the cubs did not know those rules yet. They acted on their feelings. They were open and honest and silly. The humans found them easy to love on this night. The 47th night of their journey through the Schessler corridor, Vera had finished her shift at 9 in the evening. She had eaten a small dinner. She had read a book for an hour. Then she had gone to bed. Everything was normal. Everything was quiet. She did not know that the cubs were not asleep. In the small room that the Valorian family shared, Ambassador Kathira had put her children to bed at 8. She had told them a story about the old heroes of their world. She had sung them a soft song. Then she had gone to her own bed and fallen asleep. She did not know that her cubs were only pretending to sleep. Talos had a plan. He had been watching the human crew work for many weeks. He had seen them use the ship's computers. He had seen how they touched the screens and made things happen. The humans did not hide their work from him. They even showed him things sometimes. Chief Engineer Danny Marsh had let Talos sit with him once and watch him fix a power problem. Danny had explained what every button did. He had let Talus press a few buttons himself. Talus had remembered everything. That night, after his mother was asleep, Talus opened his eyes. He poked Mora, he poked Fen. The three cubs got out of their beds without making a sound. Valorians were very good at being quiet. Their big soft paws made no noise on the floor. They opened the door slowly. They looked down the hall. No one was there. The lights were dim. The ship was sleeping. Talus led the way. He knew where he wanted to go. He wanted to go to the main deck. He wanted to see the big computers. He wanted to try the things he had seen the humans do. Mora followed her brother. She was not sure this was a good idea, but she did not want to be left alone. And she was curious too. Fen was excited. He did not really understand what they were doing. He just knew they were having an adventure. Adventures were fun. He bounced along behind his siblings with his tail swishing back and forth. The main deck was empty when they got there. The night crew was in a different room, watching sensors and drinking coffee. They did not expect anyone to come to the main deck in the middle of the night. Why would they? Everyone was supposed to be asleep. Talus climbed into the captain's chair. It was very big for him, but he fit. He looked at all the screens around him. They were dark but not off. Little lights blinked here and there. The ship was always watching, always working. Even when everyone slept. He reached out and touched a screen. It lit up. Talus felt a rush of joy. It worked. The computer responded to him. He did not need a special code or a special card. He just touched it and it turned on. On Valorian ships, cubs could not touch anything. Every system needed permission. You had to put your paw on a scanner. You had to enter codes. Children did not have permission for anything. But human computers were different. They were open. They were friendly. They wanted to be used. Mora climbed up next to her brother. Fen crawled under a console and found more buttons. For the next 5 hours, the three cubs explored every system on the ship. They did not break anything. They did not mean any harm. They just wanted to play, and play they did. By the time the first morning crew member woke up, the starward Hope had been completely transformed. Every screen showed bright colors. Every system had a new name. The whole ship had become a giant game. And Commander Vera Hollins was about to wake up to an alarm she had never heard before. Vera opened her eyes slowly. Something was wrong. There was a sound she did not know. It was not the sharp alarm that meant danger. It was not the beeping that meant someone was calling her. It was something else. It sounded almost happy. It sounded like music. It repeated again and again in a pattern that made her think of game shows she had watched as a child on Earth. She sat up in her bed and rubbed her eyes. The room was still dark. Her clock said it was 5 in the morning. She had 2 more hours before her shift started. Why was there an alarm? She looked at the console next to her door. Every room on the ship had a small console. It showed basic information. It let people call other rooms. It showed alerts if something was wrong. Vera had looked at that console 1,000 times. She knew exactly what it was supposed to look like. It did not look like that now. The screen was flashing in colors. Green, then purple, then orange, then pink. The colors changed every second. Across the screen, in big friendly letters, were words that made no sense. They said play mode activated. Press any button to begin adventure. Vera stared at the screen for a long moment. She blinked. She rubbed her eyes again. The words did not change. Play mode, adventure, what was happening? She got out of bed and put on her uniform jacket. She pressed the button to call the bridge. The screen made a happy sound like someone winning a prize. Then a voice came through. Bridge here. This is Lieutenant Kate Brennan. Commander, is that you? Vera could hear something strange in Kate's voice. It sounded like she was trying very hard not to laugh. Brennan, what is going on with my console? Vera asked. It says something about play mode. There was a pause. Then Kate answered. Commander, you should come down to the main deck. You need to see this for yourself. Vera felt worry grow in her chest. Is the ship in danger? Are we under attack? No, no, Kate said quickly. Nothing like that. We are all safe. But something has happened. Chief Engineer Marsh is here. He can explain better than I can. Vera ended the call. She finished getting dressed and walked out of her room. The hallway looked normal at first. The lights were at their usual dim level for nighttime. The walls were the same gray color they had always been. But then she noticed the floor. There were little glowing arrows on the floor. They pointed toward the main deck. They pulsed with soft light, one after another, like they were guiding her somewhere. She had never seen anything like this. These arrows were not part of the ship's normal systems. She followed the arrows. As she walked, she passed other crew members. Some were in their pajamas. Some were in uniform. All of them had the same confused look on their faces. All of them were walking toward the main deck. Lieutenant Jack Palmer, one of the security officers, walked up beside her. He was a tall man with short brown hair and a calm face. But right now he looked very confused. "Commander," he said. My door greeted me when I opened it. It said, "Good morning, Player One. Your adventure awaits?" Vera did not know what to say to that. They reached the main deck together. The door slid open and Vera stopped walking. She stood in the doorway and looked at what her ship had become. Every single console was different. The navigation screen, which usually showed star maps and route information, now displayed a cartoon picture of space. The stars had little faces on them. When someone touched a star, it made a giggling sound. The communications console had been covered in digital pictures of flowers. The words on the screen said, "Call your friends. Make new friends." Friends are fun. The life support panel had been renamed. It now said, "The breathing game." Points are good. More points mean more air. The screen showed a score that kept going up every time the air recyclers completed a cycle. As Vera watched, the score reached 1 million. The screen exploded with digital fireworks and played a victory song. The weapons console was the only one that looked almost normal. The Cubs had not been able to get into the actual weapons systems. Too many locks. Too many codes. But they had covered the console screen with digital stickers. There were flowers and small dancing creatures and a picture of what looked like a smiling sun. In the middle of all this chaos sat Talus. He was in the captain's chair. His silver fur was neat. His amber eyes were bright. He looked very proud of himself. He looked like he had done something wonderful. Mora was asleep under the communications console. She had curled up into a ball with her tail wrapped around her nose. She looked peaceful, and small little Fen was the most awake. He was standing next to Lieutenant Kate Brennan, pointing at different screens and talking very fast in his high chirping voice. Kate was nodding along. She was actually taking notes. Ambassador Kathira stood to the side of the room. Vera had never seen her look like this before. Her ears were pressed flat against her head. Among Valorians, this was a sign of great shame. Her tail was wrapped around her legs. She would not meet anyone's eyes. "Commander Hollins," Kathira said. Her voice was tight and careful. "I must say sorry for what my children have done. I do not know how they got out of our room. I do not know how they did this. On Valorian ships, this would be impossible. Our systems need special permission for everything. A cub could not touch a console without an adult's code." Vera looked around the room again. The giggling stars. The breathing game. The dancing flowers. She should be angry. This was her ship. These were critical systems. Cubs had turned them into toys, but she was not angry. She was amazed. Chief Engineer Danny Marsh walked up to her. He was a short man with thick glasses and messy hair. He always looked like he had just woken up, even when he had been awake for hours. Right now, he had a big smile on his face. "Commander," he said, "you are not going to believe this." Vera raised her eyebrows. "Try me." Danny pointed at the life support console, the one with the breathing game. "That game they made? It is tracking the air recycling system. They did not just put a game on top of it. They actually connected the game to the real system. When the recycler works, the game scores points. And here is the crazy part. To make the game work better, they changed how the recycler runs. They made it more efficient. Vera did not understand. More efficient? How? Danny shook his head in wonder. I have been working on these systems for 10 years. I thought I knew everything about them. But these cubs found settings I did not even know existed. They found old test modes. They found hidden features. They connected things that were never meant to be connected. And somehow it all works. It works better than it did before. Tallis spoke up from the captain's chair. His voice was small but proud. The numbers went higher when we changed the breathing thing. Higher numbers are better, so we kept changing it until the numbers were very high. Vera looked at the cub. He was 6 years old. He did not understand engineering. He did not know about air recycling systems. He just saw a game with numbers and tried to make the numbers go up. And in doing that, he had improved a system that human engineers had been working on for decades. Danny was still smiling. I need to study everything they did. I need to understand how they thought. Commander, these cubs might have just taught us something about our own technology. Vera looked at Kathira. The ambassador still looked ashamed, but now there was something else in her eyes. There was confusion. There was surprise. Maybe even a little pride. Ambassador, Vera said slowly, I do not think your cubs broke anything. I think they made something new. Kathira's ears lifted just a little. I do not understand. How could children improve human technology? They have no training. They have no education. They were just playing. Vera smiled. That is exactly it. They were just playing. And that is something humans understand very well. The morning shift came on duty at 7. By that time, word had spread through the whole ship. Everyone knew what the cubs had done. Everyone wanted to see the main deck. Vera had to post security officers at the doors just to keep people from crowding in. And getting in the way, Danny Marsh had not slept at all. He was too excited. He moved from console to console with a datapad in his hands, recording everything. He muttered to himself as he worked. Sometimes he laughed out loud. Sometimes he just stood and stared at a screen with his mouth open. Lieutenant Kate Brennan had become Little Fen's guide. The small cub followed her everywhere, still trying to explain all the things he and his siblings had made. Kate was patient. She listened to every word. She asked questions. She treated Fen like he was a real engineer giving a real report. Mora had woken up from her nap under the communications console. She was shy around all the new people. She stayed close to her mother and would not speak, but her big amber eyes watched everything. Vera could tell she was taking notes in her head. Tallis was star of the show. He sat with Danny and explained every change they had made. He did not use technical words. He did not understand how the systems really worked, but he remembered exactly what buttons he had pressed and in what order. He remembered what happened on the screens when he made changes. He remembered what worked and what did not. We wanted to make the map pretty, Tallis explained, pointing at the navigation console. The old map was boring. Just dots and lines. So we found the place where you could change how it looked, and we made the stars happy. Danny nodded, typing on his datapad. You accessed the display settings. That part is normal. Any crew member can change how the screens look. But then you went deeper. You found the test mode. Tallis tilted his head. The test mode? It is a special mode that engineers use to check if the systems work, Danny said. It is not supposed to be easy to find. We hide it so normal users do not turn it on by accident. But you found it anyway. Tallis's tail swished proudly. I pressed many buttons. Some of them made new screens appear. Some of them did nothing. I kept pressing until something fun happened. That was it, Vera realized. That was the difference. Human children did the same thing. They pressed buttons until something happened. They explored without fear. They were not worried about breaking things. They just wanted to see what was possible. Valorian cubs were the same. They had the same curiosity, the same playfulness, the same desire to explore. But on Valorian ships, they could not explore. Every system was locked. Every function needed permission. Cubs could only watch and wait until they were old enough to get access. Human ships were different. Human ships were open. Ambassador Kathira had been watching from the side of the room. She had not spoken much since her first apology. But now she stepped forward. Her ears were still a little flat, but she no longer looked ashamed. She looked thoughtful. "Chief Engineer," she said to Danny, "I must ask you something. Why are your systems like this?" Danny looked up from his datapad. "Like what, Ambassador?" "Open," Kathira said. "Accessible. Your Cubs found test modes and hidden features and settings that even you did not know about. On a Valorian ship, this would be impossible. Our children cannot touch anything. They cannot explore anything. They must wait and learn only what we teach them." Danny thought about the question. He took off his glasses and cleaned them on his shirt. This was something he did when he was thinking hard. "I guess it is because of how humans learn," he said finally. "We learn by doing. We learn by making mistakes. We learn by breaking things and putting them back together. Our technology is built the same way. We want people to explore. We want them to find new things, even if they are not supposed to." Kathira's ears lifted with interest. "You build your technology to be explored? Even by those who do not have permission?" "Especially by those who do not have permission," Danny said with a grin. "Some of our best discoveries came from people who were not supposed to be looking. People who got curious. People who asked, 'What if I press this button?'" Vera stepped closer to join the conversation. "It is not always a good thing. Sometimes people break things. Sometimes they cause problems. But we have found that the benefits are greater than the risks. When you let people explore, they find things you never expected. They make things you never imagined." Kathira looked at her Cubs. Talos was still helping Danny with the navigation console. Mora was quietly watching Kate work at the communications station. Fen had fallen asleep on the floor, curled up like a little silver ball. "Among my people," Kathira said slowly, "we believe that order is the highest good. We believe that rules keep everyone safe. We build our ships and our systems with this belief. Everything is controlled. Everything is planned. Nothing is left to chance." She paused, and Vera saw something change in her face. It was like she was seeing something for the first time. "But my Cubs did not follow those rules," Kathira continued. "They explored your open systems. They made changes. They created something new. And instead of causing damage, they improved things." She shook her head like she still could not believe it. "This goes against everything I was taught." Vera put her hand on Kathira's arm. It was a human gesture of comfort. She did not know if Valorians had the same gesture. But Kathira did not pull away. "Maybe your way and our way both have value," Vera said. "Your order and control keep things stable. Our openness and exploration bring new ideas. Neither one is wrong. They are just different." Kathira looked at Vera with her big amber eyes. "You are very wise, Commander." Vera laughed softly. "I am not wise. I am just tired and confused and trying to make sense of a ship full of giggling stars. But I know that your Cubs did something special tonight. And I think we should learn from it instead of just fixing it." Danny looked up from his work with excitement in his eyes. "Commander, I have an idea. Instead of just putting everything back the way it was, what if we studied what the Cubs did first? What if we documented all their changes? Some of this stuff is actually really clever. The breathing game alone could save us significant power on long voyages." Vera considered this. It made sense. The Cubs had stumbled onto something valuable. It would be foolish to just erase it without understanding it first. "Do it," she said. "Take as much time as you need. Work with the Cubs. Learn what they learned. And when you are done, write a report. I want to send it back to Earth. The engineers there should see this." Danny's face lit up like he had been given a wonderful gift. "Yes, Commander." "Right away, Commander." He turned back to his console, already lost in his work. Tallis sat next to him, eager to help. For a moment they looked the same. Not human and Valorian. Just two curious beings, excited to discover something new. Vera looked at Kathira. The ambassador was watching her cubs with a new expression. It was no longer shame. It was wonder. "They are remarkable," Kathira said softly. "I have always known this, but I did not know they could teach me something." Vera smiled. "Children always teach us something." That is true for humans and Valorians both. The main deck was still full of colorful screens and dancing flowers and giggling stars. The ship was still in play mode, but somehow it did not feel wrong anymore. It felt like the beginning of something new, something that neither humans nor Valorians could have created alone, and it had all started because 3 little cubs had stayed up past their bedtime to play. 3 days passed. The ship still flew through the Kessler corridor, but everything on board had changed. Danny Marsh worked around the clock. He slept only when Kate Brennan forced him to. He ate only when someone put food in front of him. The rest of the time he studied the cubs' work. He wrote notes. He drew diagrams. He talked to himself in excited whispers. The cubs became his partners. Tallis spent most of his days at Danny's side. The young Valorian had a natural talent for understanding how things fit together. He could not read the human words on the screens, but he understood the patterns. He understood the colors and shapes and numbers. He pointed out things that Danny had missed. He asked questions that made Danny think in new ways. Mora came out of her shell slowly. She did not like crowds or noise, but she loved the communications console. She had been the one who redesigned the interface. She had moved the buttons around and added the flower pictures. When Kate showed her the old design, Mora shook her head and pointed at problems she could see. The old design was confusing. The buttons were in strange places. Her new design made more sense. Kate had to admit the cub was right. Little Fen was too young to help with the technical work. But he had his own job. He was the tester. Whenever Danny finished studying a change, Fen would try to use it. If Fen could understand it, it was simple enough. If Fen got confused, it needed to be made simpler. A 4-year-old Valorian cub became the measure of good design. Vera watched all of this from a distance. She had her own duties. The ship still needed a commander. There were still reports to file and decisions to make and problems to solve. But whenever she had free time, she came to the main deck and watched her crew work with the cubs. It was beautiful, she thought. Humans and Valorians, adults and children, all working together on something new. This was what the mission was supposed to be about. This was why they had built a joint ship in the first place. Not just to travel through space together, but to learn from each other. To grow together on the second day, Ambassador Kathira called a meeting with Vera. They met in the small conference room near the captain's quarters. Kathira brought tea, a human custom she had learned to enjoy. Vera brought her questions. "Ambassador," Vera said after they had settled into their chairs, "I have been thinking about what you said, about Valorian ships and how they are built. I am curious. Why are your systems so closed?" Kathira wrapped her large paws around her teacup. The cup looked small in her hands. She was quiet for a moment, gathering her thoughts. "Long ago," she began, "our people made mistakes. We built machines that were too powerful. We gave access to those who were not ready. There were accidents. There were tragedies. Many lives were lost." She paused, and Vera saw old pain in her amber eyes. "After those dark times, we decided that control was the answer. We built rules into everything. Our technology would only respond to those who had earned permission. Cubs would learn only what their elders taught them. Nothing would be left to chance. Nothing would be left to play." Vera nodded slowly. "I understand. You were protecting your people?" "Yes," Kathira said. "But now I wonder if we protected them too much. My cubs found your open systems and they played with them. They made changes. They improved things. On a Valorian ship, they could never have done this. They would never have had the chance to learn by doing. They would never have discovered their own abilities. She set down her teacup and looked at Vera with serious eyes. Among my people, cubs are treasures. We guard them carefully. We shelter them from all harm. But perhaps in sheltering them, we also shelter them from growth. Vera thought about human children. She thought about the way they learned. They climbed trees and fell down. They touched hot stoves and got burned. They broke things and got in trouble. Every mistake taught them something. Every failure made them stronger. We have a saying on Earth, Vera said. What does not kill you makes you stronger. It is not always true, but there is truth in it. Humans believe that struggle is how we grow. We do not try to protect our children from all problems. We try to give them safe problems to practice on. Kathira tilted her head. Safe problems? Games, Vera said. Puzzles. Challenges that look hard but cannot cause real harm. When human children play, they are practicing for life. They learn to solve problems. They learn to handle failure. They learn that mistakes are not the end of the world. Kathira's ears rose with interest. And your technology is like this as well? It is designed to be played with? Vera smiled. In a way, yes. Our engineers are just grown-up children who never stopped playing. They build systems that invite exploration. They hide Easter eggs in test modes and secret features. They want users to discover things. They want people to have fun with their creations. Easter eggs? Kathira asked, confused by the term. Little surprises hidden in the code, Vera explained. Jokes and games that only appear if you look for them. They have no practical purpose. They're just for fun. But they also encourage people to explore, to dig deeper, to see what else they might find. Kathira was quiet for a long moment. Vera could see her thinking, processing these new ideas, comparing them to everything she had been taught. This is very different from our way, Kathira finally said. We would never put unnecessary things in our systems. Every function must have a purpose. Every feature must be approved by elders. There is no room for play. And that works for you, Vera said gently. Your ships are stable. Your systems are reliable. You have traveled the stars for longer than humans have. We are not saying your way is wrong. But my cubs improved your systems by playing with them, Kathira said. They found things your own engineers had missed. If your way allows for such discoveries, perhaps it has value that our way does not. Vera reached across the table and touched Kathira's paw. Perhaps the best way is somewhere in the middle. Valorian stability and human creativity. Control when it is needed and freedom when it is safe. We built this ship together. Maybe we can build a new way of thinking together, too. Kathira looked at Vera's small human hand on her large Valorian paw. The size difference was striking, but in that moment they did not feel like different species. They felt like friends. They felt like partners. I would like that, Kathira said softly. I would like to build something new. On the third day, Danny called everyone to the main deck. He had finished his study. He had written his report. Now he was ready to share what he had learned. The crew gathered around him. Valorians and humans stood side by side. The cubs sat in the front where they could see everything. Even little Fen was awake and paying attention. I have studied every change the cubs made, Danny began. There are 147 modifications across 12 systems. Some of them are just cosmetic. The giggling stars, the dancing flowers, the happy greetings. Those are cute, but they do not really do anything. He paused and smiled. But 32 of the modifications are significant. They improve how our systems work. The breathing game, as Talus called it, has made our air recyclers 12% more efficient. Mora's communication interface is easier to use than anything our designers ever built. And Fen's hide-and-seek game with the sensors actually found a calibration error that has been affecting our scans for months. The crew murmured in amazement. Vera felt pride growing in her chest. Pride in her ship. Pride in her crew. Pride in 3 little cubs who had stayed up all night to play. Danny continued. I am recommending that we keep many of these changes. Not the giggling stars. Those are fun, but they get annoying after a while. But the real improvements should stay. And I'm recommending something else too. He looked at the cubs, then at Kathira, then at Vera. I am recommending that we create a new research program. We call it the Open Architecture Initiative. It combines Valorian security with human accessibility. It takes the best of both approaches. And it starts with one simple idea: let the cubs play. The room was silent for a moment. Then slowly the crew began to clap. Humans and Valorians together, applauding an idea that neither could have reached alone. Talus sat up straight in his seat, his tail swishing with joy. Mora allowed herself a small smile. Little Fen, not really understanding what was happening, clapped along with everyone else because it seemed like the fun thing to do. And Commander Vera Hollins looked at her crew and felt something she had not felt in a long time. Hope, real hope for the future. 3 months later, the Starward Hope returned to Earth. The journey through the Kessler Corridor had been successful. They had mapped new star systems. They had collected data on strange cosmic events. They had done everything they were sent to do. But the most important thing they brought back was not data. It was an idea. The Open Architecture Initiative had grown during the long voyage home. Danny Marsh had worked on it every day. He had written hundreds of pages of notes and plans. The cubs had continued to help him. Talus had become his unofficial assistant. Mora had redesigned half the ship's interfaces. Even Little Fen had contributed, testing every new feature to make sure. It was simple enough for anyone to understand, but the work was not done by humans and cubs alone. The Valorian adults had joined in too. Ambassador Kathira had shared knowledge about Valorian security systems. She had explained why her people valued control so highly. She had helped Danny understand how to combine human openness with Valorian safety. Other Valorians on the ship had contributed as well. Scientists and engineers and diplomats had all found ways to add their ideas. What had started as a small project had become a true collaboration. Two species working together on something neither could have created alone. When the ship came through the final jump gate and Earth appeared on the screens, the crew gathered on the main deck one last time. The consoles no longer showed giggling stars and dancing flowers. Danny had restored most of the original settings, but some changes remained. The communication interface still used Mora's design. The air recycler still ran on Talus's improved settings. And deep in the code, hidden where only someone very curious would find it, there was still an Easter egg, a single animated star that giggled when you touched it. Commander Vera Hollins stood at the front of the room and looked at her crew. 3 years she had spent with these people. 3 years of long days and quiet nights and moments of wonder and fear and joy. This mission had changed her. It had changed all of them. "I want to say something before we dock," she said. Her voice was calm but full of feeling. "When I took command of this ship, I thought I knew what our mission was. We were supposed to explore space together. Humans and Valorians working side by side. I thought it would be about science and diplomacy. About charts and treaties and formal meetings." She paused and looked at the cubs. Talus sat straight and proud. Mora peeked out from behind her mother. Fen was climbing on Lieutenant Kate Brennan's lap, as he often did these days. "I did not expect it to be about play," Vera continued. "I did not expect 3 cubs to change everything by staying up past their bedtime. But that is what happened. And I think it happened for a reason." She turned to face the whole crew, human and Valorian alike. "We have been treating this collaboration like a business deal. You do your job, we do ours, and we meet in the middle. But that is not how the best things happen. The best things happen when people play together, when they explore together, when they break the rules and make messes and discover things no one expected." Ambassador Kathira stepped forward. Her ears were high and her tail was calm. She no longer looked ashamed when people talked about what her cubs had done. She looked proud. "Among my people," Kathira said, "I will tell this story for the rest of my life. I will tell of the night my cubs turned a starship into a playground. I will tell of the human crew who did not punish them, but praised them. I will tell of the Open Architecture Initiative and how it was born from mischief and curiosity and play. She looked at her cubs with love shining in her amber eyes. I will tell my grandcubs and their grandcubs. And I will tell them the most important lesson I learned on this ship, that sometimes the greatest wisdom comes from those who have not yet learned to be wise. That sometimes the best teachers are the smallest among us. Little Fen did not understand most of what his mother said, but he understood that it was about him and his siblings. He raised his small paw in the air. "We made the ship fun?" he announced loudly. Everyone laughed. The sound filled the main deck, human laughter and Valorian purring mixing together in a warm wave of joy. The ship docked at Earth Station. 3 hours later, a delegation was waiting for them. High-ranking officers from the human fleet, elders from the Valorian Council, scientists and politicians and journalists. Everyone wanted to hear about the mission. Vera gave the official report first. She talked about the star systems they had mapped and the data they had collected. She gave numbers and facts and all the things the politicians wanted to hear. Then Danny took over. He talked about the Open Architecture Initiative. He showed slides and diagrams. He explained how Valorian security and human accessibility could work together. He gave credit to everyone who had helped, including the 3 cubs who had started it all. When he was done, there was silence in the room. Then an elder from the Valorian Council stood up. He was old and gray, with eyes that had seen centuries pass. His name was Elder Korath, and he was known for being strict and traditional. "This is very unusual," Elder Korath said slowly. "Among our people, cubs do not work. Cubs do not invent. Cubs wait and learn until they are ready." Danny opened his mouth to defend the project, but Elder Korath raised his paw. "However," the elder continued, "I have read your report carefully. I have studied the changes these cubs made. They are clever. They are useful. They show a kind of thinking that our adult engineers rarely show." He paused and looked at the cubs, who sat between Vera and Kathira. "Perhaps we have been too rigid. Perhaps there is wisdom in your human ways that we should learn." Admiral Grace Porter, the highest-ranking human officer in the room, nodded in agreement. She was a small woman with gray hair and sharp eyes. She had commanded many ships in her long career. She knew what it took to make things work. "This initiative has my full support," Admiral Porter said. "I want to see it developed and tested. I want our best engineers working with Valorian experts. And I want those cubs involved." She smiled at Talis, Mora, and Fen. "You 3 have earned your place at the table." Talis's tail wagged so hard that his whole body shook. Mora ducked her head shyly, but she was smiling. Fen just waved at the Admiral like she was an old friend. Later that evening there was a celebration. Food and music and speeches. Humans and Valorians mingled together, talking and laughing. Vera stood near the window, looking out at the stars. So many stars. So many places still to explore. Kathira came to stand beside her. They watched the stars together in comfortable silence. "You know," Kathira said after a while, "on my world, this would never have happened. My cubs would have been punished for what they did. I would have been shamed. There would be no celebration." Vera nodded. "On my world, they would have gotten in trouble too. But then someone would have noticed what they created, and they would have been praised for that. That is how we are. We punish the rule-breaking, but we reward the discovery." Kathira made a soft sound, almost like a laugh. "Your species is very strange." "So is yours," Vera replied with a smile. They stood together a moment longer. Then Kathira spoke again. "When I return to my homeworld, I will propose changes to our education system. I will suggest that we let our cubs explore more, that we give them safe problems to play with, as you said. It will be controversial. Many elders will resist, but I believe it is the right thing to do." Vera turned to look at her friend. "And I will propose that we work more closely with your security experts. Our openness has benefits, but it also has risks. We can learn from your caution." Kathira extended her large paw. Vera took it in her small human hand. They shook, a gesture both species understood. To the future, Kathira said. To the future, Vera agreed. Far across the room, little Fen had fallen asleep in Kate Brennan's arms. Tallis was talking to Danny about plans for new projects. Mora was quietly drawing on a datapad, designing interfaces that no one had asked for but everyone would love, and somewhere in the code of the Starward Hope, deep in the diagnostic systems where only the most curious would look, a little animated star waited patiently. When someone found it and touched it, it would giggle. Just like the cubs who had put it there, a small reminder that play was never just play. It was the first step toward wonder. It was the beginning of all discoveries. It was how children, both human and Valorian, learned to change the world. And it had all started because 3 little cubs woke up in the middle of the night and asked the question that drives all progress. What happens if I press this button?